Hey guys, that was the very unprofessionally queued up animation we had done for Crystal Palace. You are at the Crystal Palace special edition of our ComicBase live stream. Welcome everyone. We are coming out here from a surprisingly balmy day outside in Franklin, Tennessee. About 62 degrees outside. I actually had the window open until just recently, but they're painting a deck next door, and the same one they were doing the jackhammering on a couple weeks ago, and now they apparently need to run air compressors all day long. So that's why the windows are shut now. Anyway, hey, all right, thanks everyone. Please say hi in the chat. It's great to hear from everyone. I want to also make sure I've got my queuing hooked up here so that we can see things. Rob Weinberg says balmy 46 degrees in Toledo, Ohio. Nice. Excellent. All right, Craig, I'm going to answer your questions at the top of the whole thing. Oro says, same in Minneapolis. Yeah, I guess it's a heat wave. All right, and snow flares for an hour putting up the Christmas tree in South Jersey. White Christmas. All right, man. Only about 3 weeks to go till Christmas, and it's we're heading in some interesting times. I'm probably going to talk a little bit about some timing on some Christmassy stuff we got going on, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later on. I'm going to try to really keep this show to an hour. It's one of those things where we ship the whole thing out. I've got a lot of stuff that's kind of on my mind, and I don't want to just be like brain dumping on the whole live stream. So I'm hoping you guys can keep me a little bit focused with questions and the like. I'm going to try to answer your stuff as much as possible. But first, I want to go ahead and just hide a couple windows here so I don't get distracted, because I think we're good to go on this stuff. And all right, yeah. So a couple of little announcements, then we'll get on to questions. If you have other questions, please post them in the chat. I will hit as many as I possibly can. I do want to show some of the more esoteric parts of Crystal Palace, Campus 2021. I want to get a little bit. We have some interesting news on artwork and things like that. I want to show a little bit of the behind the scenes on that one. Probably do a little bit more of that next week as well. But yeah, just kind of give you guys a little bit more of the making of on all this one, and also get into some of the nitty gritty. Okay, so with that said, announcements. So turn behind me here. This is the fourth quarter limited variant edition sketch cover of the Blu-ray or the ComicBase 4K. The last of these that we owed to people have been sent out today. And if you had a ComicBase 2020 Blu-ray subscription, remember part of the deal on the old version was we would promise to give you 4 quarterly updates of that one. As part of your deal. So you probably also got your 2021 sent to you in physical format on that one. There will be a decreasing number of those sent out over the next couple quarters, just to fulfill any subscription obligations we have to anyone, where we promised you we'd be giving you physical stuff, and we charge you the postage ahead of time. So darn it, we're going to ship you stuff. This is a royal production headache for all of us here, but darn it, it's we got to keep up our end of it, because you guys put your faith in us with your money and your trust. So we want to live up to it. That said, I personally am looking forward to not having to do the quarterly ritual of the Blu-ray ships, because as much fun as it is to have just mailboxes full of stuff going out and to see all that happening, man, it's a lot of disruption from the normal work in the office here, and it kind of takes us off task for a couple 3 days while that gets going. So I'm kind of happy to have the physical end of that out of the way. We are planning on updating the disc images that come out with ComicBase 2021, the 4K archive edition. I am planning on updating those on about basically a quarterly basis. So if you have an urge to download all the stuff instead of getting it in physical format, that will be possible as well. So anyway, that if you are a 4K Blu-ray customer, look for your, and you have it in physical format, look for your copy to arrive in the mail, and that should be out there in the next couple days, depending on where you are. If you're in Turkey, it might be a little while. And yes, we do have customers in Turkey who have Blu-ray subscriptions. All right, so other things are happening. Build 1277 is available. So back up a little bit and talk about how we do builds. If you guys ever see in ComicBase, matter of fact, let me go ahead and pull it up here just so it's a little bit more concrete what the heck I'm talking about. Let's go to screen number 2. This should be coming up on the screen. Excellent. All right, so if you ever pull up ComicBase, you go under the Help menu over here. You say About ComicBase. All right, we're going to show you a preposterously large version number down here. It's going to start with version 21. ComicBase 2021, luckily, is also version 21, so for once those two are in sync. So we're going to try to ship on a yearly basis like clockwork from here on out, because then when people call up and say, I have ComicBase 15, we don't have to keep on saying, do you have 2015 or version 15 that shipped sometime in 2013 or so, or wherever it was. Anyway, right now, I'm loving that the calendar year and the version are synced up. We're going to try to keep that happening. Anyway, the first part of this version number here is the major version. That's the big release. If we say ComicBase 2021 or ComicBase 2020, that's what we're talking about right there. The next part over there, point whatever, is it's meant for big, major revs. We used to use that when we would do sometimes like a Rev 2 version of a major release, like ComicBase 2017 Revision 2. You'd see that number become like 20, like 17.1 or something like that. Typically, that's going to be a 0. It's just the way it works. The number after that is, it's kind of like your bug fix number, or your first, your major, bug roll-up number, I guess is what you'd call it. So when we have a lot of little fixes and we want to roll them into one big package, when that number changes right there, that's the one. So the third part here, the 21.0.0, when that changes to a 1, at that point this becomes a forced update. So you can't get the next version of content updates until you've downloaded the software at that point. And then after that comes, it's called the build number. In this case, it's 1277. All right, that changes literally every time I hit compile. So every time you do anything at all with the program, if I change one number in the entire program, that's going to become a new number. So this one obviously gets to be very big, very fast. And since, I don't know, just the last 3 months since we started, making this a tracked number, we're up to already build number 1277. Anyway, if you want to see every single last thing that we're doing, that is the number to watch. And so we'll talk about having build 1277 out here. But we're not going to make you download it until the number to the left of that changes. The one where we say it's version 21.0.1. All right, with all that in mind, what is going on right now, I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been doing since release of ComicBase back on right around Thanksgiving, and then I'll tell you what's about to become 21.0.1. So, build 1277 just dropped a couple minutes before the show here. Some things that are different. The screensaver does a better job of counting if you have it set to show all your media instead of of just books or comics or magazines individually. If you have it set to say, hey, show the whole schmear, it does a better job of figuring out which pictures it's got to work with. The flags are now part of the installer, so you might have seen over here. Let me go back here. Let me see if is my magnification working? Yes, it is. Excellent. So right up here by the name of the publisher is a little tiny flag, and that tells you where this one's from. I believe that's the Brazilian flag in this case. Anyway, so what would happen sometimes, the flags are just a collection of files. Let me go to, gosh, I couldn't even tell you where some of these are. It looks like Mexico, this one looks like Australia, and so forth. But anyway, depending on what order you installed or uninstalled older versions of ComicBase in, it might have uninstalled the flags before or after you'd already installed the flags that were part of 2021, and so it basically undid some of the work. And so you might have seen a little red X up there because it was looking for the picture that had just been uninstalled when you uninstalled your last version. If that's the case, don't worry about it, because now every time you download any kind of update, even the small ones from us, the flags are always going to get put back, as are the picture logos. This means the installers for the program are just a little bit bigger than they were before, but nothing much. And this way, it gets rid of that whole sequencing problem that we had as far as did you want to install the old version versus the new version. So anyway, if you have little red X's up there, fear no more. If you download the latest version, that will go away. Other things that are kind of worth knowing. If you are by any chance listening to this podcast from Holland, or any of the countries that use a comma for your decimal point, we have at long last solved the problem where pictures that are like issue number 13.2, which that's an actual issue number for certain Marvel titles. Those ones in your local system would be 13,2, and it will now properly find the picture file that goes along with that issue number, no matter what your thing is. Crazy, crazy stuff like that. There's a long list of them. Have a look. I will point you to out on the screen here. I'll point you to where on the site you can go to get to those. If you go up under Help and then go to, Internet, and go to the ComicBase homepage, and if you have that on your main screen, so I can actually show it to you. Come on over here. Oh, come on. Okay, Cursor decided it wants to be funny now. All right, give me just a minute. I'm just gonna pull up another browser. Okay, let's. Are we? Yeah, I have actually seen the issue wherever I turn on the mouse magnification. Sometimes the browser becomes unresponsive, so that's something I need to watch out when I'm doing live streams in the future. But let me go ahead and bust out of that for just a second and see if we can't get control of my computer again. There we are. Excellent. Okay. So if you come up here and make sure that I'm on the right page, if you come up under Support and then Interim and Testing Builds, what this will do is this will tell you every little thing we're doing, and you'll see this number will increase every single time we do a build, which could be a couple times a day, it could be every couple of days, but you'll see every last thing that we do. And this is the full list of everything we've done since it shipped a couple weeks ago. Many of these things will not apply to you or be of interest to you in the slightest, but if they are, that's what you can find out everything that's new. And I'm going to try to do a better job of rolling this information into the beta updates list for any of you who've set your browsers to download beta updates automatically. All right, raising the excellent question: how do I set my browser to update to download updates for betas automatically? Easy enough. Come up here under the Setup menu, come to Preferences, and there is a new preference. This is one of the things I didn't get a chance to talk about last time. Right here at the top for Check for Interim Updates. And you can do this if you have that checked, and especially if you have it set to check for updates every time your database is open. Every time you go and launch ComicBase, it'll say, hey, are there any new beta updates? If so, you'll get a note saying there's a new update available. You click yes to do it. 1 or 2 clicks later, you've got the new version installed. The update process, I'm actually pretty proud of. It's much, much simpler than it was in previous versions of ComicBase. The updates themselves are much smaller, and they install in just a couple of clicks. So it doesn't hurt to do this, but honestly, you don't need to keep up with every last thing we do every minute of the day. We will let you know whenever there's a major update. So if I have this unchecked, it will only trigger when we do that 21.0.1, 21.0.2, change that third number or greater. If you check to check for interim updates, then you'll also get notified whenever there's a different build available, and so you have every single last thing that we've done lately. But anyway, that's worth doing, especially in the early days of any product release, so you always have the very latest. But feel free to ratchet it back after that if just the constant updating just gets to be annoying for you. All right, so other things that are kind of interesting. All right, so let me scroll back down to that. And actually, let me also just do a quick check of the chat. 60 minute, yeah, Greg says 60-minute live stream. Yeah, wow, famous last words. Yeah, absolutely. John P says, haven't received mine yet. I want to say, I remember sticking yours out in the mail bin just a day or two ago, so you'll be getting there yours soon. All right. Greg says, understanding of ComicBase message supports, there's a small bug using ComicBase 21 on Parallels with a Mac. Not really. Not if the only bug that I know of when using ComicBase under Parallels is, and it's not really a bug, it's the same old issue where if ComicBase, Parallels will want to set up a share between your okay, so let me back it up here for anyone who doesn't know what Parallels is. So Macs and Windows boxes until incredibly recently were basically the same under the hood. Basically, there would be Intel hardware running either Mac OS 10 if you were on a Mac, or you'd be running on the same hardware, you'd be running Windows 10 or whatever else. Now, just very recently, Apple switched to a different processor architecture. But until then, there was really no rational reason you couldn't essentially natively run Windows on a Mac. Well, one of the ways you could have of doing that was to set up it's called a virtualized environment, and one of the products for doing that is a product called Parallels, or Parallels Desktop, which runs on your Mac and allows you to run Windows in a window on your Mac. So you can effortlessly switch between the Mac side and the Windows side on the same MacBook or whatever else. Now, when you do that, it works great. There's no problem with it whatsoever because, again, under the covers, both machines are they're the same beast. The one weird thing that cropped up recently is it got to be the fashion amongst a lot of the virtualization companies that the way that they would share information between your Mac side and the Windows side, when you were inside the Windows environment, the way it would go out and see the Mac side of the environment is they would set up a fake network share between those two. So basically, they would treat your Mac's hard disk, even though you're on the same physical computer, when you're in the Windows portion of it, it would treat your Mac's hard drive as if it were on a network, and so it would, share between the two. It would do the reverse when you were on the Windows side. It would treat it as a file shared location from your Mac. Now, what happens is SQLite, which is the database engine we use, can't use, I believe, UNC shares, which is to say it can't work with shares that start with a backslash as part of its file name. And so if you are using Parallels Desktop or any of those things to share between these two environments, you have to make sure that your computer isn't set up in such a way that it thinks that where your database is living is really on a network. It has to think it's really on a physical hard drive, or it can't be opened up normally. And there's three ways to handle this. The short version is you can either turn off the sharing between the two sides, and so in that case, your Mac can only see your Mac, your PC can only see your PC. You can't just drag things between them. That works. You can take your ComicBase databases folder. Typically, what these things like Parallels Desktop would do is they would set up a network share on the Windows Documents folder and a few other folders, but they wouldn't share all the folders on the drive. If you take your ComicBase database, where your ComicBase database lives, and you move to any other folder on your hard drive that isn't set up as a network share, then you'll see when you look at its full name that it has a path name that's something like C:\\/ my name blah blah blah, as opposed to / my name blah blah blah. And then that will work. Or lastly, you can do a map network drive to take the UNC share, the one that starts with // and turn it into, say, your Z drive. We covered all this in a previous podcast, and I'll probably going to have to do a tip video on it just to sort of sum this all up with some visuals. But that's the only known issue I have with Parallels that I've ever heard of as an active issue with ComicBase at this point. If there's something else going on in the forums, I'll have to have a look around. All right, let me go back to some of the older questions here before I get completely lost on them. So Craig said, is there a way to find, and that's interesting, that didn't show up on, here we are, let me switch to the key here. Craig Guerin says, is there a search to find all the pictures that need to be replaced because they're too small? Okay, easy enough. If I want to find anything, there's ComicBase has really extensive searching, but we kind of layer it a little bit so you don't get too lost in it. It all starts with this find at the top right of the whole thing, right in the center of the screen, where, for instance, if I just want to go to a particular title, I just start typing, say Daredevil, and I'll go to anything that starts with what I'm typing. Same thing goes, I can beep in a barcode. But then we can also find other things like this. I can find characters by first appearance. I can find writers and artists, etc. Or I can get to the regular find that we used to see in ComicBase, which is called Find Other, or which takes me to the full find. Well, another way to get there very quickly is just from anywhere in ComicBase. If I just hit Control F, it'll go straight to the full find. All right, now from the full find, I can say Find, and then I got a couple of built-in searches. I can just find My Comics. That's a list of everything I personally own. Comics released this week, comics released last week, and then we get down to things that are item fields. In other words, they have to do with an individual item, or things that have to do with, a title as a whole. So for instance, Action Comics is published by DC. An individual item of Action Comics, say Action Comics number 238, would have a price, but Action Comics as a whole doesn't have a price, right? I mean, but all the things in it put together have prices and so forth. That's kind of the differentiation between these two very long lists. And if I really want to get crazy, I can go to Advanced Find and we can really do some nutty stuff. But in this particular case, what I want to do is I want to go, let's take it from the top here, because I realize I got into this a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control F, I'm going to bring up Find. I'm going to say Find What? I'm going to say Item Fields. And I'm going to scroll down until I see, say, Picture Height. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, it's less than, I don't know, anything less than, say, 400. Now, if I do a find there, it's going to pull a list up of every picture I've got that's less than 400 pixels high, and then that'd be a good one that maybe you want to replace. And if you want to then, print that list out, and I'm not going to do it right here because there's probably going to find a lot of things. But if I want to print any list, all I got to do is highlight, one or more items in the list. I can right-click and do a quick report, and then it brings that up in a lovely window, which of course is on the other screen. And then that's a list of everything I just, made a list of. So anyway, that's pretty much the steps of how I would go and find a list of pictures that are too small in one direction or another. I could choose picture height, I could choose picture size, I could choose picture width, whatever dimension is interesting to me and whatever I think means too small, I would plug in, I don't know, picture height less than 400, I certainly want to see a bigger one of. So that's what I would probably start with. Okay. Let's see, I had another question right at the top of this one I want to make sure we covered before I lost it. Snow Flurries, audio good, 86-minute live stream. Parallels? Nope, I think we got it. Okay. Oh, here, okay. So, Competent Man asks, is there a way to batch upload a file of UPC ISBN into ComicBase to add comics? Not really. Okay, so if I understand what the meaning is, I think what you're looking to do is to use something like a remote scanner to scan a ton of comic books and then say these are all the ones I scanned, and then just say blammo all at once as an add to inventory. So to introduce that one a little bit for folks who don't know what the heck we're talking about. If you have the Pro or Archive editions of ComicBase, there's a function in there called Add by Barcode right here. In it, what you can do is you can just go start scanning random things you have laying around the office. Let me find a couple things. Okay. For once, I actually see comic books in a looks owned by comic book guys. So here's a Showcase Presents American Men at War. Here's a Books of Magic graphic novel and so forth. So what you can do if you have these versions is basically as fast as you can scan things, you can be adding stuff to your collection. You can, it's going to default to having a quantity of 1. It's going to default to the condition being near mint, and you can set the default of what it sets your cost as. That's in your preferences. But basically, as fast as I can beep them, and I can change, like, hey, I really got 2 copies of this one over here, or I got this one here, but I noticed a ding in it, so I want to say that this one's really only in fine, right? I can do that sort of work as I go, but mostly I'm just going to be going beep, 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 as fast as I go, add them to inventory. All right, so that's the background. So the question, as I understand it, is, let's say I had one of these barcode scanners that you see them in grocery stores for like taking stock on the shelves, where I just go and I just beep every can of soup on the shelf, and I go back to home base at the terminal, and I more or less dump the contents of my barcode scanner into the computer and say, okay, here's the 80 things I scanned. There's nothing saying we couldn't do this. We haven't done it yet because 2 reasons. One, we don't currently sell a scanner that does that. No reason we couldn't if you guys are interested. We certainly, our current sources for barcode scanners, they do make one that will allow us to do batch scanning if that's of interest to folks. There's a little bit of a verification issue that I do wonder about, where because a lot of times what people want is they want to be able to go down to like a warehouse or something where their comics are held, beep in a million comic books, come back to home base, and then say, blammo, this is what I scanned. And again, there's nothing saying we couldn't do this, but I do wonder if you had forgotten to scan something, or you scanned the wrong item, or if there's an ambiguity. Sometimes there is on barcodes about which one was which when there's a barcode that could belong to more than one item. I do wonder how you'd handle that. It's not something that happens very frequently, but I do wonder about that. And then I also wonder how you'd handle condition issues. But let's say you'd been a really good kid and all your stuff was all near mint and it was all it was all basically the normal case for this sort of thing. Yeah, no, it's something we could absolutely do. I don't have any objection to supporting that as a feature. All I really would look for you guys to do is kind of show of hands, either here or in the forums, and just say, is this something that you guys really are looking to have done? Because if I get enough people to say that this is something I really want to see in the program, it's easy to do. Honestly, all we have to do is read through the text file that your thing is giving it. We basically have to give you some way of doing the dump, and then after that, read through everything in the text file, and then just feed it to the screen that we've already got over here to show what you've done, let you say go, and then you're golden. So yeah, certainly it's something that I would support if you guys were interested in having it supported. So let me know. Okay. John P.S. Will Parallels work with the new Macs when Apple makes their own chips and aren't using Intel? The initial report from Apple when they made the announcement about the new chips was Parallels was part of their Dog and Pony show that Apple trotted out at the time. They said, oh yeah, we've totally got the problem solved. We can absolutely support it. I haven't heard anything since then, and honestly, I haven't been one of the guys who got one of the very first Apple's built into the new silicon yet, so I can't verify it yet. But I think that's probably something that we'll look into pretty soon to make sure what the story is on that. I don't see a reason why it shouldn't work just fine. I really don't. Because as I understand it, the new chips are largely ARM-based, or at least similar to ARM. They've done emulation layers between ARM and Intel hardware before. It's probably they're going to use something like that, as a bridge to the Intel software in the future. So as long as I'm not writing something like a device driver, I don't see any real complication with that working. I think that you're only going to know that when I get my hands on some actual hardware and test out for myself. That being said, my MacBook is probably about 5 years old, so maybe this is a good excuse for Santa to bring me a new one so I can just go ahead and start testing with that. All right. And Greg just said the exact same thing that I did. If I were really on top of my game here, what I would be doing is reading your guys' chats before I open my own dang mouth to see if it hasn't been answered by the exact next guy in the chat. All right, so let's see here. Okay, Andre says, is there a way to see if there are doubles in the pictures? Well, interesting question. So there aren't doubles because there can only be one picture by the same name in the same folder. So technically there aren't doubles. That said, if you guys were really clever, and I think this is one of those things I meant to talk about a little bit and kind of not talk about, but if you guys were really clever and you were watching our picture counts, because we like to advertise how many pictures we've got going in the program as we go, just honestly, just to build up our own morale and let us know that we're doing something with all the endless hours we do, just editing and doing all the production work required to get the whole thing together. We were getting really close to pushing 700,000 pictures in the database, which every time there's a big round number, we get a little excited, even though at this point the big round numbers all just sound like a really big number to us. But anytime we approach a big round number, we're like, oh hey, we're about to cross another threshold. That's kind of neat. Anyway, one thing I noticed as I was doing all the cropping work, you guys might remember that from a couple live streams ago, I was talking about doing that to make the cover gallery look a little better, as I was working with another programmer and doing an awful lot of manual work to manually crop in just infinite numbers of pictures that all had their crops off by just a little bit that people submitted, and they're not as tight on the cropping as we would like. Well, one thing I notice is that every once in a while I'm hitting the same picture under two different names in different places. And what that would be sometimes is, sometimes someone would change a title and they wouldn't move the pictures away, or they would change a pictures designation. Instead of it being issue number 1, there'd be a number 1 and a number 1A, which were really the same picture. And in the database, really, we'd figured it out, and so there was only a 1A left in the database, but the old picture for number 1 still was left in our picture folder. And over the years, it had been a long time since we'd done a full scrub of our own database, just to flush out anything that wasn't a currently active picture. So anything that somehow got orphaned from its title, anything where the designation of it had changed, anything that for any reason whatsoever was not going to get picked up by the program, we actually shortly before ComicBase launch did a scrub of all that stuff. And so all the new picture discs, at least as they shipped, every single one of those images is tied to an image or to an entry inside ComicBase. So there's no extra anything out there anymore. And as a result, we wound up losing about 2.9% of the pictures. Like I say, it's been a long time since we did a full picture scrub, probably the better part of a decade. But we had to do it here, and honestly, it helped make it so the pictures would even physically fit on the discs. So we did do that before launch, and so instead of launching with almost 700,000 pictures, we launched with over 675,000, because we lost like 20,000 pictures out of the total. So yeah, I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but we sure did. And so anyway, there are a lot less pictures than there were before, I'll say that. The way we did it, frankly, is we wrote a utility which went through all the entries in ComicBase, and we did a separate copy of the picture folder into a virgin folder, and only copied things that had a record associated with them, so that there were no extra foo laying around in the database. If that's of interest to people, that's a function that we might make available to people who want to clean up their own picture libraries, where if you've been using ComicBase for 20 years and you've been downloading infinite numbers of pictures and you just want to clean up your own stuff, maybe that's something that we can make available to you guys so you can make a clean copy of your own picture library. Maybe that'll help. All right, that's a long way around to answer that question. I hope this was useful. All right, let's see here. Robert asks, are only the newer comic covers without watermarks, or you have got rid of them on the covers now? Anything that was new in the on the discs right now is all unwatermarked. Well, this way, there's no visible watermarked. Not saying that there isn't secret digital information that would let us know that it's our picture, but it's nothing that you can see with your naked eye. All right. Let's see here. Digga-digga-digga-doo. Jumpy suppers analog. Yeah. Mac markets. Okay. Mass updated barcode for file. Okay, so we got one vote for yes, mass updated barcode from a file. Competent man, curious, if you would, tell me what brand of scanner are you using, or would you be using if you had that going? And if you really don't mind, shoot me a link to what you paid for it, because I'm curious to know. Honestly, with all this stuff, we're willing to do most legal things as long as there's a market for it and we can make enough people excited to, provide, that we provide the feature and that they, come at us and shower us with money. We would do a lot of things as long as the support doesn't get crazy out of bounds. It doesn't, build in just way more effort for us to keep it going than it would be to do it in the first place. And as long as more than about 3 people care, if only like 3 people care about a feature, they better care so much about it that it pays just crazy amounts of money, so it pays the salary to make it happen. But yeah, no, any of these things, if I could just size up, just get a general feeling for it, it's like, if we had this feature, could we sell more barcode scanners? Would more people who had higher end barcode scanners be willing to buy our product? Any of that stuff makes it, if we can answer yes to that, it makes it an easy feature to say yes to. That said, this one is not a hard feature to add. Just need to make sure there's a little bit of a market for it. Okay. Let's see. And John says, I've never been using barcode scan like that. Okay. So then an opposite case. Okay. And Steve, again, also kind of thing. Andre says 703.92 total for now. I may have double that. Yeah, my guess is you probably have all the ones we shipped. I think what Andre's referring to is the number of pictures in the database. If you've always been downloading pictures every week, say like with Sidekick, or if you've downloaded everything we've ever shipped and you just left down there, which would be the default thing, then you'd have all the duplicates we ever had, right? Because if we, like there was one that was actually kind of a long series. I want to say it was a couple hundred issues, and somewhere along the line it had changed from like like Flash second series to the Flash second series, or vice versa. And so there were like a couple hundred issues in the wrong place. That's when I really, as I was doing the cropping, I discovered that we had something I needed to look into, and do kind of the scrub on the database library. But if you've been doing that all along, same as we have, and you never cleaned your database, you also would have 2.9% of your pictures would be, foo by now, in which case they're just kind of extra, garbage on your disk. And so it's nice to kind of clean them up a little bit if you want. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, so we're going to print Cali, the people of ComicBase. Yes, I want the cleaner. Okay. All right, so Andre, 1 vote for some code to clean up the stuff. Andre, if nothing else, I may just slip you a copy of the admin tool just by itself. But I'll see if I can't incorporate that into like the file tools as something like, say, copy the pictures to a new library. I just want to put it out there. All right, Mark asks, Pete, how roughly would it take one of your scanners to reach the UK thinking about buying one? Typically, everything we ship gets to the UK in about a week. It's not used to be the case. When COVID first busted out, shipping to the UK was murder, but we're getting stuff back and forth from the UK inside of a week right now. That's been pretty consistent. I don't know if it's jamming up at Christmas time, but it's not too bad a deal right now. All right. And let's see here. Like you have access to the most recent weekly update page now without having to go to the file location windows. Okay, cool. And all right, and we got a source on the barcode. Excellent. All right, cool. All right, let's get on to other things I want to show about. I think that clears where I was at on the chat. I will keep an eye on that one as we go further, but let me talk about some other things we had going on. All right, first thing I want to show about in ComicBase that I didn't get enough chance to talk about, but which I'm just stoked about, is we're calling it Psychic Typing 2.0. It's kind of like honestly, it's a bit of a return to form, and with some additional niceness on top of it from the old Psychic Typing that we had in ComicBase 1. So let me tell you, first of all, what the heck am I meaning when I say Psychic Typing? Let's go to a title which has almost nothing filled out, so I'm not stomping over something that anyone's got. Okay, so Batman from Glénat, Italia. Okay. All right, I'm just going to type some random foo into this one, so don't take this as real. But all right, I'm going to go to the credits page. What Psychic Typing is, you guys heard about autocomplete, right? So the idea is that, let's say that this one was written by Denny O'Neil, right? The idea is that I can start typing D-E-N, and by the time I've typed Denny, D-E-N, it's figured out that I probably mean Denny O'Neil, all right? Now, the cool thing why this isn't just autocomplete is because I can now just type comma. Let's say we had a second writer. Let's say Mark Waid also got involved. I type M-A-R, and Mark Waid is now, let's say John Byrne also is a writer, comma, J-O-H, and so forth. Let's take someone really obscure. Somebody in the chat, give me the most obscure writer you can think of. I just want to see how legit we can keep this whole thing. And I'm going to pull up in another window the more immediate chat so I can see this live. YouTube. Let's see if I can make this happen. Okay, going to my own chat. Whoa, and let's not have the let's not have the sound on. Okay, looking for the most obscure chat. I don't see it. You guys are being quiet. Come on. I'm an obscure writer. Seriously, Greg, do you have a writing credit? Let's find out. Gregory. Oh man, you're so obscure you didn't show up in autocomplete. All right, so that's a demo fail. Oh geez. Let's see. Who's the guy who writes Cyberfrog? Ethan Van Sciver, right? So E-T-H-A-N Van. Okay, so Ethan Van Sciver. It took me until I got to the va before it could suggest his name. All right, what the heck is going on here, right? Okay, what this kind of comes down to, and Craig says, Claes Reimerthy. I have no idea to say it, but let's try it. Claes. Well, that was easier than Ethan Van Sciver. Geez, Ethan's going to feel terrible about that. All right, so what's going on here? So what's really happening is, as you're typing, after the second letter, it's going out there and it's trying to find the first match in whatever kind of list you're looking for. And we keep all kinds of little sub lists on record for, is this person a writer? Is this person an artist? Are they a colorist, a letterer? Is this a character? Is this a storyline? And so forth. And so we go through little things there and we try to find the first match. Now, that's pretty cool, and as opposed to old autocomplete, where you could never type multiple items in an autocomplete. In a regular autocomplete, you're matching just an exact thing. So if there were ever going to be two of something, you'd be in a lot of trouble in terms of like filling in the list. Whereas with psychic typing, this is something where you can just hit comma, or if you're doing semicolons, like in storylines, semicolon, and just go straight on to the next item and so forth. And so you can very, very rapidly fill out stuff. Well, another thing we did this time out, and we were able to do this to some extent beforehand, but we can do it much better now, is we can predict what you want, not just based on what type of person they are and where their name falls in the alphabet, but we can do it based on how frequently their name comes up associated with the type of work that they're doing here. So, for instance, if I go Alex Ross, let's say this one was drawn by Alex Ross, right? A-L-E, Alex Maleev. Interesting, all right? Alex Ross, much higher profile artist, but not the most prolific artist. Alex Maleev probably wrote 300 times as much, or drew 300 times as much stuff as Alex Ross. But by the time I get to R, he's the first Alex R that has any kind of frequency in the grand scheme of things. Let's say if I want to say Carlos Esquera, and so forth. Just with a couple letters, I can get there and get the whole thing up there. Now, this is really cool because it saves a ton of typing. It's also really, really cool because it saves a lot of typos. Because there are a lot of people who, for instance, like James Tinian IV, who I see his name a lot, but I can't remember at the moment whether he's an artist or a writer. So let's try him. James Tinian IV, right? So I got as far as James T, right? Every once in a while, someone will put him down as just James Tinian. Sometimes people will put him down as James Tinyan, T-I-N-Y-N, or so forth. But those things aren't the most frequent, even if they happen more than once in the whole database, they're not the most frequent way to do that one. And so I have to type more in order to make the mistyping when those things come up. And so what this tends to do is, without forcing you to go through lots of dialogues and a lot of error checking and things like that, you can type as fast as you possibly can. Matter of fact, you can type faster, because you're typing less. But it will also tend to make it so that your errors are harder to make. It's not illegal in ComicBase to type a name that's never been seen before. We just want to make it so that if there is a standard name for somebody, like let's say Art Adams, right? So Art Adams is harder to find than the way he's usually known, Arthur Adams, right? We just want to make it so that the more common things pop to the top and are easier to type. So anyway, that's how this all works. I'm pretty stoked about it. We did a couple of little things. These are all creator credits you're seeing right here. Let's flip back to the main page here, and you also can see this works with storylines. So for instance, I don't know, what's the name of a storyline? Bane of the Demon, sure. You can just start typing, and as soon as you get what you want, type semicolon, and you're on to the next one, and you can go, dead or dead of winter, etc., and just keep on going like that. Also, as far as character appearances, you can do characters like this, like Doom Patrol, or this is one that we made a little tweak on just recently to handle parenthetical appearances of character names a little better. So people say things like Green Lantern, right? Well, which one did we mean, right? So, is it Green Lantern Guy Gardner? Is it Green Lantern, 3, 2 parentheses, whatever guy. But if there is a parenthetical associated with someone, like I believe, let's see, like, here, like, let's say like Robin, right? There's been any number of Robins. and I'm trying to remember how they were, how people tend to put those inside. Yeah, bad example. But anyway, but when there are parentheticals of for instance, who, oh, do we say like Thor? Now, now I'm trying to remember something where people would use the parenthetical in the name. I remember the one that came up right away was Green Lantern, but when that happens, you just can start typing, and you know, and it will fill in the whole deal. And as soon as you type just a little bit in there, it takes it. Anyway, so that happens. It will automatically index your existing notes. If you type something new, it'll become just like autocorrect on your phone, except better. It becomes part of its library that it knows to search. And we can take it from there. Now, the very first time, in order to enable Psychic Typing 2.0 to work, you guys probably have noticed that the very first time you launched ComicBase 2021, it ran through all, it did an update of your contributor lists, contributor storylines and notes. It only has to do that once to generate the frequency counts and so forth to make the whole trick work. If you were one of the very, very, very first people to download the new version, might want to run that through that thing again, because we added some special sauce over the opening weekend to handle the parentheticals a little bit better than we were doing. If you want to force it to re-update your list to get all the latest storyline indexing and so forth, what you do is you go up here and go to File, go to File Tools, go to Rebuild Lists, and then right here, Lists of Contributors, Storylines, and Notes. And then that will, again, on my machine, I've got an SSD. It takes 10-15 minutes. I've heard people with really slow hard drives say it took about 2 hours. It does take a while, but it will chew through every note, every character, everything you've got, build that index. It's a one-time deal. Once you've done that, everything you type should be much faster. So anyway, that's a cool thing. I just want to show that off. All right, let me do a quick check of the chat here. Andre says, are there people here interested to have a catalog of the entire cover inventory? That is a fascinating question. I would be really interested to see what that looked like. One thing I wonder about is we've done reports. So for instance, you can do a collection report, or not a collection report, but like an issue checklist of everything in ComicBase. There comes a time around, I forget what it was. It's some very large number, but it's large, but it's not unthinkably large, where Windows just kind of blows up. You wind up getting a hard fault in a deep part of Windows that puts together strings, and I've also seen the PDF format itself kind of destroy itself. Wow, so much for Do Not Disturb. Yeah, Do Not Disturb is set, and yet my phone went and just disturbed me. Anyway, I have seen with PDFs that involve literally hundreds of thousands of pictures, which is what a cover catalog of everything in ComicBase would look like. I have seen the PDF format itself blow up. That said, I think it'd be cool to try. So give it a shot. Maybe there's a way to make it all happen. And if so, that would just be neat. I mean, there would be nothing like it in the world in terms of just as a reference. I think that would be really cool to see. All right, so let's see. Greg says, I have one writer credit in the CBG. Well, darn it, clearly we need to get you your stuff indexed in Comics Buyers Guide so you pop to the top. All right, let's see here. Greg points out Alex Ross probably pop up quicker in the cover artist field. That is absolutely correct. Matter of fact, a weird story. I don't know if you guys know this one. Alex Ross, when he first started out, I want to say it was in a Terminator book for Now Comics. Was his first painted art credit that I ever saw him do. He was drawing as Alexander Ross back then, and honestly, he wasn't that good. but a couple years later, he really hit his stride, and he's been a force of nature ever since. So if you guys ever want to track down that Terminator series, I want to say the last time I looked at it, it was going for like $5. But it was at least an interesting story. But anyway. All right, so okay, all right, some more banter about that. Okay, other things I wanted to talk about. How are we doing on time? 4:49. I'm gonna start picking it up a little bit. Okay, so when I did the whenever we do a product release, there's there's a time if you ship any kind of software where, eh, well, let me back that up a little, just a touch. Some of the smarter people who do software have pointed out repeatedly that shipping takes a force of will. You get really, really close to shipping, and that's a really comfortable place to be if you're a software developer, because everything's working pretty good. You rarely see bugs. You rarely see any kind of problems that cause that acid feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's a nice place to be. And if things do come up, you can fix them quickly. You feel like you've done something good with your day. You move on. To go from that state to the all right, it's time now. Let's get this sucker out the door is terrifying. I've done this for 30 some years. It doesn't stop being terrifying, because one of the things is that it doesn't matter how long your beta period was. It doesn't matter how extensively you've unit tested it, or thrown the things on emulation platforms or whatever else. At the second that you throw this thing out the door, somebody in Finland is going to come at you with an issue involving something you have never seen before, and you're going to have a sleepless night about it. And yeah, Black Friday did not disappoint on that score. We had bugs that only trip on French Canadian systems. We had a rather elaborate one which involved if you have conflicted privileges in your program data folder that make them unscannable by the installer. We had things pop up that it worked perfectly fine on a perfectly working machine, but on your machine, weird things could happen. Now, we, within, days or so, stepped around almost everything that we saw, and so we rose to the occasion, but it doesn't mean that we weren't on high battle status all the way through. Because when these things happen, the very last thing you want to do is have more copies going out the door, which they're doing on a minute-by-minute basis, where you're playing out your odds. Well, if 2% of the people have this problem, how many more tech calls is that going to mean for us on Monday? You don't want to be around for that. You want the thing to be fixed the second that there's any kind of issue, even if it's on some Finnish currency system that hasn't been updated in 10 years. So anyway, that's kind of how we get over the hump when we do product ships. Anyway, with all that said, there are a few things that we have to do when we kind of just say, well, all right, the code is frozen, the features are out there, and now we got to update all the sites and the ordering systems and the databases that track your registration serial numbers and everything else like that. There's all this kind of machinery on the back end that it's really invisible. It's not sexy stuff. It just has to be done all the time. But anyway, one of the things that's interesting though is we have to say, all right, out of every single thing we did this whole year worth of development effort, or half a year of nothing but just new features and so forth, what's the top 5 things we're going to tell people about? And we have this idea even before we plan the version. It's like, well, we got to have, what's the short version of the story as far as what the new version does for you? And those are the things that make the big bullet points. But there's a lot of other things that make the release make sense for us, like psychic typing. We think that's dead sexy once you start using it. It's really going to help on content entry for us. But if you were to tell someone off the street, hey, this is a psychic typing 2.0, it uses like half the keystrokes you had to do to get a hit, versus the previous version, that will be met with a polite smile. It's not going to make anyone run out and buy anything. So we have to come up with a list of what are the top 5, top 6 things we think are going to make the list that are really cool. But that's not necessarily the things that, when we consider our whole year in reverse, that made the biggest difference to the ComicBase community as it was. So a couple things that didn't make the list, but which I think are going to be huge, which I just want to give a little bit of love to. One of them was that thing you saw at the top of the program about just checking for interim updates. Or if you guys have ever launched the program, it said, hey, there's a new update available. And the fact that you could get that update up and running in a couple of seconds and be running the new version, that is night and day versus the way it used to be. I mean, it used to be if you really knew what you were doing, you could have the new version running in a couple of minutes. But that wasn't most people. That wasn't most of our customers. And so we were really scared to put updates out because we knew any update we do would involve some amount of tech support and hand holding. It's like, how do I get the update? How do I download it? I can't, my firewall tricked off this thing or else. All those things, we want to make it sure became as smooth as humanly possible. So we really like the way the updates are working, and please do try that one out. We really, really like the way the update is now 2 pieces. We mentioned this on previous live streams, where The main program install itself is about 50 megs to 75 megs, depending on which version of ComicBase you're using. It's not a gig anymore. It's not a gigabyte, and so it downloads far faster. You can install it much faster. Now, the cost of that is there's a separate installer you do the very first time you run the program, which has all the basic resources, particularly the stock database that comes with ComicBase, and that sucker takes a little while to download. But it's a one-time deal. That one almost never changes. And so we can do updates to things much more frequently, much more easily than we could do before, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. We did something this time out we've never done before. We never had the guts. It mostly worked. I mean, I'm going to say it mostly worked, which is to say ComicBase 2021 was a forced update. It was just like a version update from ComicBase 20.0.3. So anyone running ComicBase 20.0.3 who just did check for updates found it as an update, provided their subscription was still good. Their serial number was already registered to them. They didn't need to enter a serial number. It pulled it out of their account, and they could be up and running on the new version in a couple of minutes. It does the one-time rebuild of their list to add all the new fields and do things like that, and you're good to go. That's much more the pattern we want to be going in the future. So when there's a ComicBase 2022, I really want that one just to be like, okay, new version's ready to rock, boom, go, and everyone's on it in the next time. And so we're really looking for that stuff. Some other things that are going to make a big difference in the end, not so sexy up front, but I'll show them to you anyway. Show it to you on mine right here. You might have noticed on my particular copy, there's this little bell icon. You may not, but you may at some point during the course of using ComicBase have a little ringing bell icon in your copy. And what that will mean is that there is a message that we're able to put out for you, just you, or people in the same spot as you, which has something interesting that we thought you needed to know. Maybe we'll use this to let you know that your subscription is about to expire. Maybe we'll let you know that that there's a special fix just for people who are on your particular, system, or using your particular version of Windows or whatever else. But it's something that we don't need to send email out to everyone. We can just tell you, and you'll get it as a notification just for yourself. And as soon as you marked out that, yeah, I got it, and these are all just test messages, they're in my mailbox, you can delete it. And if you have checked them all, the bell goes away. Doesn't bother you at all. But it's a really nice, really subtle way we've got of just messaging straight to you without broadcasting to the whole world. Whether this becomes a big thing or a little thing, I guess it's up to us and how we use it, but I'm looking forward to at least having one method of communication we've got with you that we can actually guarantee it gets to you. That more and more is a real problem for us, and that we can't actually say for anything that we try to tell you, hey, there's a critical update. Microsoft just changed something that's going to break everything if you don't update by this date or something. We can't make sure that you will even get that message due to everyone's spam filters, due to everyone's lack of attention email, whatever that thing is. Now we've at least got one way that if you're using ComicBase, we can say, all right, look, this is a message. We at least send it to you. I'm excited to put that stuff out. All right, there are some new fields that came along with this new version in ComicBase. I'm not going to tell you what some of the fields do right now, because that's going to be another person's surprise. Which is to say, as you all know, we work with Atomic Avenue, and they are going to have some things coming online, which I'm not at liberty to discuss right now. But pretty soon there's going to be some really cool new stuff you can do with ComicBase and Atomic Avenue that I've never seen done before on any system for selling things. And I think this could just be really, really neat. And you'll get a clue as to what some of those things are. And I'm not going to confirm any guesses, so don't try. but if you wander through the field lists, especially like the columns to view, you'll get some ideas. All right, other things here. Let's see. Okay. Greg says I checked through the master database, and my writer credit for ComicBase X51 is there. Nice. All right. Well, I'll look for it. Okay. And let's see here. Andre, tell me where I can send the catalog to you. Andre, yeah, if you do put together a catalog of everything in ComicBase, probably the best thing to do is stick it on a Dropbox, send me a link. I would love to see that. I think that would just be really neat. the screensaver. Yeah, I think I told you we just did. Andre, I think the exact bug you were mentioning with the screensaver just got fixed right before showtime. Which is to say, if you go to, and let's go to screensaver, and I pull this up, and I go to settings. It used to be if you had it set to media to show all, it wouldn't necessarily count that you had all your stuff. It wouldn't necessarily conclude that you had enough stuff to show, and you'd get a message saying, hey, I haven't got enough stuff to show, and so it would make you pick from any of the categories. That now works. And by the way, one thing I also learned, well, I didn't learn it the hard way, but I definitely made a note to myself. Do not show the all thing. In other words, do not show everything on the screensaver. Do not demo this with the mature titles showing. So if you set to show the mature and you include magazines in that one, there could be images out there that I don't want on YouTube because that's what the mature ones do. So anyway, that's a note to myself. So that's that. Okay. All right. Oh, and Craig says, tried to search picture size less than 27,000 entries. Not working for me. Thanks. One thing I would do is, before you do any kind of search based on picture size, do a file rebuild of your lists. Because if you go to the picture list, so this is again is under File, File Tools, Rebuild Lists. There's a thing here to have it automatically compute all the sizes and the presence of all your pictures in ComicBase. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me switch the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing. So let me back that up. Apologize about that. I got caught in my own head and I wasn't watching the right monitor. So if you go to File and then Rebuild Lists and Picture Lists, what that will do is it'll go through every item in ComicBase, find the picture if it's got one, and figure out its dimensions, and then that's what you'll want to do base your stuff off of. If you don't do that first ahead of time, what will happen, you'll realize, is there's that magic we do when you go to a particular title where, again, if you watch the upper left-hand corner of the screen really quickly as I go to a title, you'll see that it very quickly does a little dance there, and it scans down every issue there. And what's doing right now is it's finding all the pictures that belong to, say, Batman from Mandadori, which I guess is Indian? Guess, no. Did I have that right? Italy. Sorry, my bad. It's finding out all their dimensions. Until that moment, if you've never gone to that title, it doesn't know the pictures necessarily, so you may have bad information in your database. So what I would do is do a rebuild of your find lists first for the pictures, and then do a search for the which ones are a little too small for your liking, and take it from there. All right, we are just over time, but I'm going to go just a little over. Let's see here. Fine, and yes, and Steve mentioned the entire thing as well. Okay, so John P said okay, and so we got that one. Just okay, yeah, and okay, so the screensaver should be working now. All right, coming up, let me guys give you a little promo something. This came in last night, and I could not be happier about this. You guys might have noticed, let me see if I can get this switched to the right direction here. All right, this is what ComicBase shipped with. This is the sketch cover done by the artist Laurel Bleckman. Did our previous cover. She's a partner of Glenn Orbick, the legendary Glenn Orbick, who just an amazing illustrator. But anyway, this was just COVID and whatever else. This was a hard cover to get going. So it was a little late in coming, and in between lining up models and getting the paint on the canvas and getting everything dry and over to the photographer and shot and everything, we wound up having to go out the door with the sketch, which we did as a variant cover. In 20.0.1, you're going to be seeing the full version of the cover, which that is the final artwork right there. Now, if you guys are absolutely eagle-eyed, you'll notice that the cover that our super spy there is stealing is indeed Crystal Palace. That file, so that's a little Easter egg just for us. But anyway, and the final version should look like that. I think that's lifted off the archive edition. So yeah, that's when we push 20.0.1, that all of your cover artwork is going to be updating to the new version. So if you have the sketch cover right now, congratulations. It is actually the first limited edition cover we've ever done in ComicBase history. I don't know that we'll ever intentionally do another one, but I think it's kind of neat. And honestly, I think it's just cool seeing how this became this. I'm also trying to get Laurel to send along some of the photographs she took of the actors when they were essentially posing the scene before she had to go and paint them, because it's just neat seeing all that production of how that all worked. All right, other things here. Other things coming up that I would like to see done in the near future. I'm not going to promise these for 20.0.1. 20.0.1 will ship with full cover art, and that's probably going to come out in the next week. We're going to do a big update of that one. So anyone who got it in the first couple weeks of release, well, you are the only people who get the sketch cover. Everyone else gets the other, gets the regular cover. But we are going to also be coming out in the near future with different dark themes. I'd like to have dark versions of most of our main themes, just so we can, really embrace the whole dark mode of that's built into Windows and Macs these days, and just for everyone who just really likes that kind of whole night view version of things. I'd like to see some really slick versions of our regular themes done just in a standard kind of dark look. And we'll put those out just as an update. And then one thing I'd like to do, it's not possible at the moment, but I definitely have this, having seen what people are doing in terms of installation and where some of the pain points are, I really want to see this happen someday. It's hard to make it happen right now, is I'd like to have a one-shot cover install for the 4K archive, which is to say, you click one thing, it downloads for as long as it needs to download. If you guys have ever downloaded the latest version of Call of Duty, you know what, or Cyberpunk 2077, and you know what I'm talking about there. But let it go, and when I'm done, it's all installed. I didn't need to do anything else. I would love to make that happen. The only problem I've got with it right now is we can actually make that happen, but it overwrites any existing pictures you've got, and I can't have that. I need to make it so that we can give you all the stuff while preserving any pictures that you wanted to keep. And so, I can think of a couple of really hokey ways to make that happen, but I can't think of a good way to make that happen. So as soon as we have a good way to make that happen, I'd love to make it so that there's, like I say, a one-shot install for the 4K archive edition, where I literally run one installer and it says, okay, you're ready to install the pictures, and go, and just come back in a couple hours, we'll be done. So anyway, that's something I'd like to see, and let me know what other things you guys would like to see, and we'll take it from there. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Yeah, dark themes, embrace the dark side, absolutely. As I hear they have cookies. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it for today. We're not too far over time. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm even going to try to have some cool theme music for the show next time. On my list of things I want to do was work up, kind of like a rockin', 30-second countdown or something like that, just so as we're rolling the whole thing, as people are coming in, that they have something to listen to. But we'll work something out. Anyway, guys, have a great one. We'll talk about Christmas and some other things next time out. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye.